What's up, everybody? Good morning. Welcome to Philly with John Marks on PHLY. Man, long weekend. Lot to talk about from this weekend. The NFL draft. Phillies win 2 of 3 over the Cubs. And we'll have Lee Gowton of Bleeding Green Nation. We'll go over some of the selections from the Eagles and some other things that are going on around the National Football League. So like we were on Friday, so we had a reaction to Jihaad Campbell, and everybody for the most part seemed very, very happy. Got good value, how he was able to get it done, get an impact player from day one, right from the shoot. And versatility, and is he an edge rusher? Is he going to be a linebacker? Can he do both? The versatility, all these things, man. So like we go into Friday, rounds 2 and 3, and then Saturday feeling pretty good. Team didn't have a ton of needs, and so they really had the option of taking players that they didn't necessarily need, but they liked. So their first pick of the second round was Andrew Mukuba, who I'll just be totally honest with you, I had never heard of him before they drafted him. So very quickly, Lou Riddick, depending on what you were watching, Lou Riddick and Mel Kiper. By the way, Mel Kiper still, I hope he's okay with Shedeur Sanders not being drafted till late. Mel Kiper beside himself this weekend. But so Mukuba, and this is what it tells me, I think the selection is very telling. And I always get a kick out of people that say, "Oh, well, you draft the best player available. You don't draft for need." And I even said it right there at the beginning of the show. But like sometimes you look at your needs and you say, "Okay, well, if we have similar players, we have an offensive lineman or a safety, we're going to go with the safety." To me, it looked like that the Eagles were zeroed in on Andrew Mukuba, who's an undersized guy. I mean, like, he's 186 pounds and he plays safety, 5'11". Jimmy Kempski had this here real fast. And about 99% of NFL safeties since 1999 have weighed more than Andrew Mukuba, and 94% have larger arms. So, yeah, I'm not telling you that I'm a well-built 165 pounds, but geez, this guy's a starting safety. They hope to be a starting safety in the NFL. So it tells me a lot. It tells me what they think of Sidney Brown. And they're saying all the right things. They're doing all the right things. Sidney Brown, and I see the same thing. I don't know if they view him as a starting caliber safety because of his coverage skills. And everything they told you about Mukuba is that they're looking at him like a CJ type, that he's going to be their starting safety that's going to be able to play slot corner or slide down the corner. Versatility, ladies and gentlemen, versatility. Sidney Brown can come in certain situations, and he's your big thumper, but they drafted this guy because they like his versatility similar to CJ. And that's the pick. Howie talked about possibly trading out of the second round back into the third round, but they were worried about not being able to draft him, that they would lose Mukuba. So they took him at 64. They took him before the night ended, which I think if you like a player that much and you're zeroed in on a player and you have options to trade back, is it worth the 4th round draft pick you're getting or a 5th round draft pick you're getting? I don't know how far the trade back would have been. Is it worth that draft pick to not get the player that you want? And I don't think it is. If you really like this player, if you have eyes on him to be the guy, then draft him. Even if you maybe took him a little bit earlier than a lot of analysts thought he could have or should have went. I saw a lot of people say they looked at him as more of a 3rd round draft pick than a 2nd round draft pick. End of the 2nd round, the 64th pick, you're 1 pick away from being a 3rd round draft pick. So I honestly have no issue with any of that. And like with a lot of these draft picks, or with all these draft picks, like now they have to be NFL players. Now they have to be productive. Now they have to get in the good players. So doing a report card, as everybody does after the draft, like it goes with the caveat, they haven't played in the NFL yet. So you look at it, is it a reach? Was it a good move? Did they get good value? Maybe a little bit of a reach when you look at where the analysts had him going, but nevertheless, who cares? Either the guy can play or he can't play. We'll talk to BLG about this coming up here in a little bit. By the way, the show, I got very excited to start the show, is as always brought to you by BetParx and the BetParx app. Love it. So today you can see my setup down here. I have the background where I have some bobbleheads and a helmet back there. So it's actually beginning to look like the home studio today. I also have the large cup of coffee. So Tyler Zulli, I haven't spilled it yet, and it's inevitable. Something's going to happen. Hopefully it's not on my laptop that I'm looking at, but I have the cup of coffee. I'm ready to go, and I'm happy. Well, I'm happy with the Eagles draft. How are you this morning?
I give you credit because it's not one of these. And I know you said you've been trying to cut back on the energy drinks. So
now I have 4 in the fridge upstairs.
You didn't need to tell anybody that.
But I was at Target and I was just getting a couple items, and I was in the aisle where they had the energy drinks, and they had the ones that I like, the C4s. They were 2 for $4. And I'm like, all right, wow, they're 2 for $5.50. And I haven't been splurging on them. And I'm like, yeah, all right, I'll grab them. No, I haven't. I haven't had an energy drink in a couple weeks.
I give you credit. I give you credit. You said, hey, I'm going to cut back on these, and you did.
Well, cheers to you. And we'll go over all the players coming up here. But like looking big picture, and we talked about Mukuba right away. At this point, it feels so good to be able to trust Howie Roseman, be able to trust his staff, because like Howie's the GM. Howie's not a scout. Howie, sure, of course he's looking at tape. He's an NFL GM, and I'm sure he loves guys, and I'm sure Jeffrey Lurie loves guys. But this really is one of these decisions that everybody gives Howie the information, and then he's making the decision based on what everybody is telling them. It's pretty clear to me they had Mukuba targeted, and they were like, all right, it's 64. We're getting offers for this pick. We don't know how far back they would have traded back in the 3rd round. So like, all right, is it worth risking it if we have the 10th pick of the 3rd round, we get an additional 4th round draft pick? Is it worth the risk? I never believe it's worth the risk. If you're unsure, and Howie's very good at saying like, okay, I think we can get this done, and maybe we can trade up if we have to. He has a knack for being able to still get the guy. If he was worried about not getting him, the hell with the 4th round draft pick or whatever you could have gotten. Get the player, and he got the player. The Eagles draft is, remember what you used to see a lot before? Reaches, taking players way too early, taking players that don't end up developing. I never feel like that when I watch the Eagles right now. They're so well organized, and they have such a good idea of what they're doing going into the draft. So then you can just watch the draft and enjoy the draft picks.
Yeah, so I think you're spot on with Mukuba there, and he's the type of player who, you brought up his weight. I think he plays above his weight a little bit. We'll see what happens when he gets to the NFL. It's obviously an entirely different game. But Fran Duffy pointed this out before the draft, and I think it ended up holding true for a lot of teams. There was a dip after like the mid portion of the 2nd round where players from picks like 55, 60 to picks like 150 kind of graded out similarly. And I think the Eagles probably felt like if they were going to get Mukuba, they were going to have to do it now, because he was one of the few players left in that tier like 2 or 3 as opposed to tiers 4 or 5, because tiers 4 and 5 felt like there was a lot of good players, but there wasn't a lot of great players. Because you and I talked about it before the draft. Like, the thing about this draft was it's a depth-heavy class, but it's not a super talent-rich class at the top. And picking 64, you're, as you brought up, you're getting to the point where you're a pick away from being a 3rd round pick as opposed to being a 2nd round pick. So I think you're right. I think they identified Mukuba as a guy that they really wanted, a guy who's able to play above his weight, who throws his body around, who has the ability to ball hawk. And I think that the Sidney Brown experiment has not failed because he's still young, but has underwhelmed so far because of the injuries. I think that this is an opportunity for them to get another young safety in here who has the ability to find the football and and not target, but go after the ball carrier. I think that this is a player that they really liked, because he actually kind of bucks the trend a little bit of that RAS score thing that you and I were talking about on Friday.
Yep, which we'll talk about coming up in a little bit. As I mentioned, 5'11", 186. But if you watch his highlight tape, which I did in extensive and intensive research, Tyler, on YouTube for about 6 minutes.
6 minutes this time?
And man, he is a ball hawk.
Mhm.
I'm telling you, he reminds me a lot of CJGJ. He had 5 interceptions last year, had a forced fumble. You wouldn't know he's 186 and 5'11". He nails people.
Yep.
I mean, he really, really does. As you mentioned, this is now the NFL. Everybody's bigger and faster and stronger, but like he has that anticipation that you saw from CJGJ, right? Like he always seemed to be in the right spot or around the ball. That's not just luck. That's because you have instincts of where the ball's going, right? Like you have that first quick step of being like, all right, like he's going here or he's going there. And that's what Mukuba has. So the anticipation's off the charts. We'll see, because again, this is now the NFL, but this draft pick to me definitely tells me, all right, we feel like that with CJGJ gone, we like Sidney Brown, but this is another guy to compete for the position, and he can move to slot if you want him to play a little bit of corner, just like CJGJ did, and then maybe Sidney Brown gets on the field. Maybe Sidney Brown plays in the box a little bit because he's probably more like of the old style non-coverage safety. Howie actually talked about in his press conference when talking about Mukuba, he talked about kind of how the non-coverage safety is out in the NFL in 2025. Oh yeah, it's out. And him just saying that tells me all I need to know about what they think Sidney Brown probably is.
Yeah, so, and I don't mean to make this like pile on Sidney Brown day, but I do think that there is merit to say that they play a similar style when it comes to getting after ball carriers and being willing to throw their bodies around. But the one thing that has always kind of worried me about Sidney Brown in today's NFL is he does get a little like head hunty, if you will. You know what I mean? Where he's plays a little bit too above the shoulders sometimes, and that it doesn't fly anymore because that's just it's a guaranteed penalty at this point. And so I think with Mukuba, at least from what we've seen at Texas and in the last year or so specifically, he does a nice job of wrapping up, going after the body and not being a shoulders and above player. We'll see what happens because he is undersized and probably is going to have to gain some weight. And I think the Eagles will, just like any professional team, will put him in the weight room and get him, 10 pounds of muscle in the next calendar year or so. But I think the one thing with him is he does a really good job of wrapping up, even as an undersized safety.
So they trade out of round number 3 and pick up additional draft picks, and they get Ty Robinson from Nebraska, an interior defensive lineman, 6'5", 288. Now, again, if you want to be wowed by some tape, man. And so now you're looking at everything on the line. You're looking at from the lens of he's going to be playing next to Jalen Carter, right? This guy is a monster he's big, he's physical, and he's quick. He had 7 sacks he had 7 sacks last year. He had 7 sacks He had 7 sacks last year. 10 batted passes over the last 2 seasons because he's so damn tall. And Zach and Bo and Fran, the coverage has been so good over the weekend. Shout out to these guys, man. They did so good in the entire weekend. Their post-draft coverage is amazing. Their draft coverage is amazing. Jimmy Kempski had a really, really good write-up of the Philly Voice. I want to give him a shout-out because he put pretty much in his recap, he put all the videos of stuff. So I don't have to actually Google it because that's all that he probably did, and he posted it up there. But like if you watch his sacks, he's not getting 2 sacks against Coastal Carolina when they're playing a bad team or they're playing an inferior team. No, this dude is dominating at the line of scrimmage. I mean, he's a round 4 pick. Eagles have done well with Milton Williams round 3, Ojimo round 7. I look at a Ty Robinson, and I mean, like, so here's what Jimmy writes. He says he's a violent lineman who can play multiple spots along the interior of the defensive line. He's powerful with a great motor and an upside as a pass rusher, right? Like personally, Tyler, I'm a high motor guy. I need the high motor, and this guy is high motor. And honestly, he looks like he could just fight everybody. I love this pick in round 4. Ty Robinson. And it's like Ty Robinson. That's a good name for me. It's an easy name to remember. Ty Robinson. There you go.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. As I watch a lot of Big Ten football, and this guy I feel like he kind of slipped beneath my radar a little bit. I didn't know a ton about him until I had to do a little bit extra. Like I actually knew more about some of the later picks than I did about this guy. But everything that I've read, everything that I've watched, makes you excited. And I think you're going to feel that way about a lot of draft picks, right? Unless they go something so off the grid where you're like, that, as you brought up, right? Like the name, when you were describing the reach, the only name that kept coming to my mind was Jaquan Jarrett. And I know that was a decade and a half ago now, but like, I think Eagles fans don't forget reaching on Jaquan Jarrett. But he was, Robinson was one of those guys where like you look at the tape and it's like, wow, this dude plays fast. This dude is a defensive tackle who plays fast. And if he can be a late, third down, situational defensive tackle to begin, where he's able to get at you, kind of put his hand in the turf and get after the quarterback. And then you grow from there, because you brought up Milton Williams. And that's what Milton Williams was coming out of Louisiana Tech, was they wanted him to get in pass packages where they knew it was going to be a pass play and he could kind of get his hand in the turf and get after the quarterback. And then he grew a little bit. And then in year 3, they trusted him in the run. And then in year 4, he was more than situational player. He was a rotational player with starting caliber upside. And then you just see he goes on and has a great postseason, has a great Super Bowl, and gets a big time contract with the New England Patriots because of it. And so if that's the ascension that you're going to take in 4 years from a 3rd or 4th round defensive tackle, you're not going to complain about that. Yeah,
you're right. Bang, 3 years from now, and he's now your starter. Like, look at the Milton Williams trajectory. He was, backup, and then when pressed into duty to be more or less a starter, like he was for the Eagles this season, he thrives. And then, just like you had said, from the rookie season, he becomes part of the rotation, right? Like maybe it's on passing downs, maybe he doesn't see a lot of snaps to start, but love the upside of this pick. By the way, this portion of the program brought to you by GLAT Hair Restoration, GLATHairMM.com, 610-980-4000. Love it. All right, so round 5, they go Mac McWilliams. Love a good Mac McWilliams. And Mac Mick. Central Florida, 5'10", 191. He's a slot corner. Who can play a little bit of the outside. He's a slot corner, is what he's going to be. Tough corner against the run. He's been called feisty, like me. I'm feisty, right? Like, you can tell the type of player that Vic Fangio and the Eagles are going for. Guys with high motors, guys that are feisty. If you look at this Eagles defense and what they are, these guys play with an edge. Remember the Jonathan Gannon defenses where they got sacks, but they would play the good quarterbacks and they would get crushed? Those teams didn't feel like they played with an edge or with violence. They were very good at getting to the quarterback, but just look at the Super Bowl. What happened in the Super Bowl? They weren't as good of a defense as they were on paper. Pretty clear the Eagles right now are drafting for guys that have high motors, which I love, that, and edge. And Mac McWilliams at 5'10", 191. I saw some talk that maybe that this wasn't a great pick. Round 5, whatever. I would rather them take a lottery ticket and say, we really like this player. Maybe it's overdrafting him, and go for it. Like, what guys do you remember in round 5 that didn't hit that you're mad that they drafted? And like, go back and look at the draft history. A lot of these guys are like, oh, I remember him. He never did anything. Sometimes they don't even make the team. So that was round 5. Drew Kendall, a center from Boston College. His dad played in the NFL, and backup offensive lineman. You hope that he develops into being a guy that can play a little bit. Who knows with him?
Positional versatility, I think, is huge for him. He could play. I think he could play 3 positions. He could play both guard and center. I think he's made almost 40 starts for Boston College. He's again, you're right. Like, you talk about 5th and 6th round picks. You're talking about taking flyers on guys. My expectation is 1st round pick, near day 1 starter. If you get to the back end, maybe it's not necessarily the case with these really good teams. And Jihaad Campbell's obviously might be an exception because of what the injury extent might be.
Like Nolan Smith. Nolan Smith wasn't a starter from day 1. He really didn't play well as a rookie.
Sure. But Jalen Carter was, you know what I mean?
Right.
So like you start to it depends on where you draft. I think, but most first round picks closest to day one starter as you possibly can be. Day 2 and 3, rounds 2 and 3, you're talking about a starter maybe by the end of the first year into year 2. You start to get to 4, 5, 6. Like that's where you're building your depth, and it is important to have that depth. But my ask is to make the team and then maybe be productive, right? From like 4 and 5. And so to go back, like when you think about McWilliams for a second, there was one corner drafted in the 4th round. I think the corner depth went from, the starters, the day one guys. Then you talk about there's a couple of guys in round 3 that like I was a huge Siobhan Revel fan from East Carolina. Had an injury. It really hurt his draft stock. I think he's eventually going to be a plus starter in the NFL. But you get past those guys, and there was a pretty sizable dip between the next group of corners, and it's why only one corner got drafted in the 4th round, and McWilliams was the 1st and the 5th. It was like 40 some odd picks. So I think that the Eagles didn't need a corner per se because they're pretty comfortable with where they're at, but they always want to add to the depth of that group. And so they I guess they felt that McWilliams was the best guy of the next group down. But you start talking about some of these offensive linemen that they acquired, like you're talking about guys who have been starters, right? Whether it be Kendall, as you brought up, it's Hinton from Michigan. You're talking about guys who have been starters in the past. And if they have any kind of positional flexibility, that's exactly what Jeff Stoutland wants to get and be able to help mold these guys into NFL players.
Yes, and we'll talk about Cameron Williams from Texas, 6'6", 317. Miles Hinton from Michigan, 6'7", 323. Just monster guys that are physically monsters. So you know what? You put them in Stoutland U. If they go to their first training camp and Stoutland's like, nah, this guy's not going to be able to hang, you cut him. Or he goes on the practice squad. And if he shows something, I mean, look at Jordan Mailata. He was essentially redshirted for 2 years before he became a player. So trust in Stoutland U. We'll talk to Brandon Lee Gowton about this coming up here from Bleeding Green Nation, his thoughts on the Eagles draft, and much, much more. And Kyle McCord from Syracuse gets drafted by the Eagles. Were they sniffing around for Shedeur Sanders? That was the hot rumor. With the Eagles have drafted Shedeur Sanders. More on that coming up here as well with BLG. That is all ahead. Right after this, back at 2-2, Philly with John Marks. Don't go anywhere. All right. So let's do this. All right. Let's talk about BetParx. And the BetParx app. Listen, it's the only place I would ever even think about placing a bet. BetParx online sportsbook and online casino app has you covered, whether you're talking about Philadelphia baseball, or I don't know if you've noticed some interesting matchups going on in pro basketball playoffs right now. Lakers lost last night. They're down 3-1. Can they keep it up? The Bucks, they lose Damian Lillard. They're down in the series as well. Boston won last night. So you have pro basketball playoffs. You have pro hockey playoffs. And you have live betting. Live betting. It's so like within the game, bet on player performances and everything else. The BetParx app is amazing to bet on sports and to play all of your favorite casino games, live dealer, blackjack, roulette, craps, poker, and online slots. New users get up to $1,000 casino bonus back if you're down in the first 24 hours. Go to betparx.com. Download the app right now and enjoy all the action and excitement from the casino at your fingertips. You must be 21. And then Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Maryland, or Michigan for BetParx. You love to play. You play to win. You bet BetParx. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Hoo-ah. All right, let's talk about Ace Hardware Home Services. So I saw a television commercial for Ace Hardware Home Services just last night, watching a program with my kids. But if you're like me, that it just struggles to do any type of repair or anything around the house other than a basic, and I am able to hang picture frames. You may see a picture frame behind me. I figured that part of it out, but listen, if something else goes wrong, I'm pretty much screwed. So that's why I call that's why I go to acehardwarehomeservices.com. Get started on your next project. It's the power of the Ace brand, striving to be the best, most trusted provider of home preservation services. And I'm talking about a wide range of residential services, installation, and home repair services. So it's plumbing, heating, cooling, electrical, free estimates on equipment installation and replacement with trusted advisors and options that are best suited for your home and your budget. And they have emergency services are available. What do? Hey, 8 o'clock on a Tuesday night. It's Saturday afternoon, and your HVAC is not working, and it's 95 degrees out. AceHardwareHomeServices.com has you covered. Local art teams live and serve your community, and they're dedicated to keeping your neighbors comfortable in your home. Again, AceHardwareHomeServices.com to get started on your next project today. Hooah! All right, we're back. Eagles draft is in the books. We'll talk more about that here in Block B. Block C of the program, Phillies win 2 of 3, win in extras last night, ESPN game. So we'll talk about that coming up in Block C. Brandon Lee Gowton of Bleeding Green Nation will join us coming up here in just one moment for his insights on the draft. I thought it was, and I get a kick of a lot of the Twitter commentary from people that are like, oh yeah, sure, you're putting out your grades in the mock draft from the drafts. How could you give out grades? They didn't play any games yet. Okay, you can go back a year from now or 2 years from now. I like the regrading post that you put, and I like to see the Mel Kiper. Like Mel Kiper gave this team a C, and 2 years later, now you got to give them an A because it was a great draft class. But you can only go based on what you see and the draft picks. Did a team reach? Did the Eagles reach? I thought there were a couple instances where not that it was a surprising pick because, like I had said earlier, most of these players that the Eagles draft, I mean, like maybe I've seen their name, but like Mac McWilliams. So like I can't tell you Mac McWilliams from Mac from Mike Tyson's Punch Out, but now I know a lot about him because I've watched YouTube video of him, as has Brandon Lee Gowton from Bleeding Green Nation, who has been doing extensive film study on YouTube for many of these players drafted by the Philadelphia Eagles. And he joins us right now. BLG, hello, how are you?
Good. How are you?
What's going on? Sorry, I lost your audio for a second. You there?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
There we go.
What's up, buddy?
Doing good. Another Eagles draft in the books.
All right, so let's do this to start. Looking back at some of the older drafts when we looked at the Eagles and we're like, oh my God, Howie Roseman, what the hell are they doing? Go back to Jalen Reagor, go back to JJ Arcega-Whiteside, and you're still gonna have misses, right? Like you're not like, and the Eagles have done very well in the first 3 rounds, and then some of the later picks have kind of been, but so like, what does this draft look like to you, and the progression and the evolution of the Eagles and their drafting style and everything else that they do with the draft?
Yeah, at a very simple level, I think they've really, in recent years, for the most part, focused on not straying too much from consensus, as you were talking about there. There are obviously exceptions, but for the most part, they've gotten closer to looking at what the consensus big board is. And as well, obviously, prioritizing athleticism and relative athletic score. And you look at mock draftable and you see like, all the good measurables and stuff like that. They've generally, skewed more towards that, especially than they did, let's say, even as recently as like 2017 when Joe Douglas was here and they had some draft classes where there was like a lot of more production, college level stats, stuff like that than there was the athleticism. So they really skewed like that in recent years. And I would think it makes sense to just kind of generally work towards those two things.
Yeah, so you mentioned the RAS, or the relative athletic score, and Tyler and I talked a lot about this last week.
Mm-hmm.
When you look at, and there's the graphic right there, when you look at it, guys that are being drafted, and there's exceptions, right? Like their second round draft pick this year, Mukuba, did not follow this trend.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what I say about this? Good. Don't overthink yourself. I remember one of the things Nick Wright, and I take it for what it's worth, he's a hot taker, but he was criticizing Howie for making the obvious pick. Good. I mean, why wouldn't you? Why would you outthink yourself? The best players there from a major university, from Georgia, from Alabama, he's graded to go right there. You like him. Why would you outthink yourself? I mean, I think the Eagles have really simplified things. Hey, instead of reaching, let's focus on the players that have had success in college. And oh, hey, by the way, this advanced analytic of this athletic score backs up what we're looking at. And then we get them into our program and we finish them into the player that we want. And that's what you're seeing. They're drafting guys that have the ability, and then you bring them into a great organization and you turn them into the pros that you want them to turn into.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds like very funny criticism coming from him. To me, the way I put it, whenever I'm kind of like frustrated with the Eagles or I have a lot of criticism for Howie Roseman, it's not because he's doing something like totally dumb and he doesn't know at all and he's totally like left in the dark, or the organization, is just like behind the asleep at the wheel or something like that. It's been like they've overthought it in the past. Like Jalen Reagor over Justin Jefferson, prime example. That wasn't because they're like dumb. It's because they totally just overthought that. We have 2 tight ends and we don't need a slot guy. Like instead
vertical
of
threat.
Yep. Yeah, and going away for the consensus, which everyone would have told you that Justin Jefferson is better than Jalen Reagor. No one had Jalen Reagor ahead of Justin Jefferson in that draft. So that's where they've kind of, again, gone wrong, is where they kind of they outsmart themselves. And I think when you stick to consensus, for the most part, again, you're not going to outsmart yourself like that.
All right, let's go over the picks. Jihaad Campbell, who I like as somebody that's a fan and watches the draft, he's one of these guys. I know he was local. To me, he was the top 15 pick. Maybe he goes in the early 20s. I know I've read on one of your posts that whatever that mock draft consensus thing is, they had him at 20. If you put all the mock drafts in there, he was available. Eagles tried to trade up to get him. They couldn't work it out. They ended up getting him at 31. After I heard Howie speak after the draft pick, maybe he starts out as more of a linebacker because of need and the versatility's there. They spoke about him as he's an edge rusher. They view him as an edge rusher going forward. What was your thought of the draft pick?
I definitely think, and you consider too, they were maybe going to trade up to 22. They can't just be for a pure off-ball linebacker, just based on how the Eagles have really valued that position. Although, again, the dynamic is a little bit different, just considering that Vic Fangio is here, and I think Vic Fangio is almost like running the draft when he draft 5 defensive players to start, and he should, or at least he should get a lot of say, given how great the Eagles' defense was last year, given how great Zach Bond turned out to be relative than what the Eagles thought they were getting when they first signed him. So, when I look at Campbell, I don't think he's going to be a pure edge rusher in terms of they're moving him to that position or anything full time. But I do think, the pass rush value that they expect him to provide is part of the equation there. And really, you look at what Zach Bond can do. And that was similar to kind of how Alabama used Jihaad Campbell last year, in terms of he was mostly an off-ball linebacker, played about 100 snaps or so as a defensive lineman, or at least that's how the Pro Football Focus categorized him, where he lined up. So this is a player that I just think ultimately kind of fits the play style of this Eagles defense we saw last year, which was really assignment sound. This guy does not miss tackles, extremely low missed tackle rate, and he's physical, he's tough. And that's what we saw from this Eagles defense last year. He really fits those things.
Round 2, they go with Andrew Mukuba, who Howie even said after the draft that they considered trading down or trading back because they liked him, but they thought maybe they could get him in the 3rd round. Ultimately, they decided not to because they didn't want to miss out on the player. 5'11", 186. And when you look at him play, you look at the YouTube, he doesn't look 5'11", 186, man. He hits violently. I don't know if he has the same type of violent impact in the NFL. I mean, I guess he can put on 10 or 15 pounds, but you see a lot of people say that maybe drafted a little bit too early. But all right, so 2 things here. 1, did you like the pick where they took him? And 2, I believe this is not an indictment, but it speaks volumes on what they think of Sidney Brown as a starting safety in this NFL. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I don't think he was some kind of massive reach. You look at Daniel Jeremiah's big board, for example, his top 150. He had about 76. They take him, at 64. So it's not but I think it's worth noting they didn't get incredible value like they did for some other picks, and certainly the Campbell pick, at least relative to consensus. So I think it's okay. Obviously, it addresses a need. I don't know that there were players on the board there that I necessarily said you had to have over him. But certainly I think the Eagles would have preferred, I would guess, and Howie kind of even alluded to trade up a little bit in the second round there, and they weren't able to do so, obviously. And he had mentioned those picks that they have next year, 12, and the 2026 NFL draft weren't so appealing to other teams. So there's that. And then, the Sidney Brown of it all. Yeah, I would put Andrew Mukuba like considerably ahead in terms of like where we project this offseason training camp battle at safety to be, where I would give the rookie the leg up there. I mean, look, Sidney Brown last year was behind the likes of Tristan McCollum and Devontae Maddox like on the depth chart. And part of that was because he didn't get a chance to prove himself to Vic Fangio in the offseason while he was hurt. And that's really big to Vic. And he'll have a chance to do that this year. So I'm not ready to say he has 0% chance, but we're talking about likelihood. I think the rookie has the inside track to win this job.
Yeah. And how we talked about versatility and coverage ability as a safety. And teams don't look for guys that are Andre Waters or Michael Lewis that are box safeties. They're dinosaurs in the modern NFL. And he, honestly, when you look at his projection, he's a CJGJ. Mm-hmm. He can come down and play corner. He can be a slot corner. He's a ball hawk. He has versatility. So, you may see Sidney Brown on the field a little bit, but it might only be because he slides down to be a slot corner.
Yeah, and I think actually Mukuba got a little better when he got away from the slot in terms of he played a lot more there at Clemson, and Texas had him pretty much, relatively speaking, focused on that free safety position. And I think when he was like able to freelance like that, or kind of just see everything from the back end instead of closer to the line of scrimmage, he started making a lot more plays. Like those interceptions he had last year, like that ball production really spiked last season. So I think there's something to be said for allowing him to kind of to see things and make plays. And look, there's with CJ, there's going to be levels of like erratic to that, where sometimes you give up a big play or you miss a tackle, and that's a big issue with him. He has a pretty decent, missed tackle rate, but you can live with that if he's making big plays as well.
All right, so they trade out of round 3, and I thought this was notable because a lot of people, like me, I was like, I would love to get one of these young tight ends in this draft.
Yeah,
but they didn't, and I wasn't surprised. They signed two of the free agents to 1-year contracts. I don't remember their name. I would have to look down to know their name.
Right.
But they're both on the younger side, coming off their more or less their first NFL contracts. And they were mid-round draft picks, 4th-round draft picks, I believe, both of them. So I'm not surprised they didn't take a tight end. Maybe they liked one of the guys and they couldn't go up to get him. So my question to you, BLG, who is the starting tight end when the season opens, game 1 for the Philadelphia Eagles?
I'm going to go with Dallas Goedert because it needs to be. Because what else is this team going to do to have like a real viable tight end option there? And Dallas Goedert is under contract. Obviously, I don't think the Eagles love the number he's at. I would say Dallas Goedert doesn't love his situation with no guaranteed money left in his contract. I think the two sides have to be able to come to agreement. The draft went well for the Eagles from a standpoint that, like, I think the places where he could go dried up, and you might say, okay, well, that hurts them from a trade standpoint, and it does, but then I think that hurts Dallas Goedert from a standpoint of the Eagles can be like, hey, if we can't work this out, like, we're just going to have to move on. And I don't think Dallas Goedert really, like, benefits from being on the open market right now. I don't think teams are like, he is a hot market. I think he could probably get the most from the Eagles. Again, it might have to be a pay cut, but he could get more guaranteed money up front. And then look at what Josh Sweat did last year. He did the same thing. He went to free agency. It's a little bit different. Josh Sweat a little bit younger, but he went to free agency this offseason and crushed it. And so I think Dallas Goedert can try to look at that example and bet on himself and say, hey, I'm going to have a good year this year. And then next year we can see what we get somewhere.
Yeah, because the Eagles really can put their thumb on the scale with Goddard. Like you said with Josh Sweat, they'd be like, okay, if we release you, and the agent's talking to other teams, so he knows what his value is out there. There's not a big contract out there for Dallas Goedert. It's dried up. He comes back 1-year contract. There's not a more high profile team than the Eagles. Look at Josh Sweat. Josh Sweat's however many sacks that he gets on the Eagles is a lot different than if he's on a bad team, because everybody sees it. And then you're playing in the playoffs. And we know what Dallas Goedert looked like in the playoffs. He could parlay a very good 2025, even if he's taking money he doesn't really want to with the Eagles. He could actually get a nice contract next year from another team. So I actually agree with you. I think post-draft, it feels like there's a better chance Goddard's here than pre-draft based on everything that happened.
And again, he has to be from a standpoint of the Eagles have no viable alternative options, not even just for this year, but like they have no one, they don't have a tight end who's essentially at least guaranteed to be on this year's roster, signed beyond this season. Like the guys they added in free agency, 1-year deals. Grant Calcaterra, even if you like him, and I think he has flaws in terms of not being the best blocker, he's going to be a free agent after this year. So it's not really ideal that they weren't able to add someone in the draft just for the sake of the long term of the position. And look, they might be able to trade for someone still, but ultimately Dallas Goedert is your best option. And I feel like all along it has made the most sense to just make it work for at least one more year.
All right, Ty Robinson looks like a rotational player right from Jump Street, 6'5", 288, just a monster. Batting balls down. He had 7 sacks last year. He'll fit nicely into the rotation. You had Mac McWilliams and Mondin, another Georgia player, go figure, Drew Kendall. So I want to ask you about Kyle McCord. I mean, 6th round draft pick, went to St. Joe's Prep. He's was an Eagles fan growing up. Maybe he ends up being the 3rd quarterback. Maybe he's on the practice squad. Who knows? But do you believe that the Eagles are sniffing around for Shedeur Sanders? Cleveland trades up and gets him. Hot word on the street is maybe the Eagles are interested in him. What are you hearing?
Yeah, that was not my impression as much as just the idea that when you're the Cleveland Browns there, and even weird with their situation, considering how we all saw the war room and they like didn't look really excited at all or happy about that, which I don't know what's going on there. But I think more the perception of them trading up would be like that. They think the Eagles could take him, not necessarily knowing 100% that they would, but just because they take quarterbacks is what they do, especially on day 3 like that. So I don't think it was like, oh, the Eagles, obviously had to have him because they passed on him a number of times there, and they didn't have to trade down if they really did want to take him at that point. So yeah, I don't think Sanders was realistic, at least from everything I heard.
It is weird because they pass on Shedeur Sanders, the Browns do, for Dylan Gabriel, who I was like, really? Like, to me, like I wouldn't have drafted him in the 3rd round. So what are they going to do? They have Kenny Pickett, they have Joe Flacco. Now they have these 2 rookies. Who else am I missing that's on that roster? They have another, but like who's not making the team here? Pickett? They just traded for him.
Deshaun Watson's still there. Probably won't play because of the injury, but still, it's just like it's just like a very weird dynamic. And looking at the graphic of all 5 of those guys is strange. Yeah, I don't even know, like, if they're going to keep all those guys in the offseason practices from a standpoint of like reps. Like how we're getting 4 different quarterbacks reps. The Eagles, for example, like they typically only the whole offseason really do like 3 guys. They had 4 last year with Will Grier too, but he basically never practiced when we were there. And even the 3rd guy barely gets to play at all. It's really just the 2. And speaking of, for Kyle McCord this year, probably going to be that 3rd guy, or we'll see because they have Dorian Thompson-Robinson as well. But both of those guys probably not going to get a lot of reps behind Tanner McKee and Jalen Hurts.
All right, last thing, and make sure you're following BLG. Brandon Lee Gowton, Bleeding Green Nation, with great draft coverage. I know I was, in addition to allphly.com, I've been all over Bleeding Green Nation. Fine coverage. All right, of the other draft picks that we didn't talk about in depth, who are the from the 4th round on? Who's the one draft pick that you really, really like that you think can project into being a very valuable player for this team?
Yeah, I mean, I think Cameron Williams, like, it's just like the perfect kind of player for the Eagles. The Eagles are in a great spot to take a chance on a guy who a lot of people thought if he had maybe stayed more at Texas, he could be a 1st round pick in the future, and like has all the tools, the size, like massive arms, like huge hands, like this. He just has what it takes from a physical profile to be a good tackle in the NFL. It's just a matter of, okay, he's raw. He hasn't played a lot, and perfect. Everything you kind of read about him and look at him with his profile, that's kind of like why he fell, is exactly something that maybe Jeff Stoutland can help him unlock. And by the time you're able to develop him, maybe, then that makes sense we'll see how Lane Johnson goes moving forward. But maybe in a couple years, like, oh, you just have Cameron Williams who can step up. That's obviously not a sure thing, but you're looking at someone who just like has the potential to kind of be a starter for this team down the road, which is something they've really wanted to add it in previous drafts. Howie Roseman has explicitly said he doesn't really like believe that they can get an offensive tackle in free agency. That's just typically not how it works. There are exceptions, but that's just not something you want to rely on. He wants to rely on the draft, and usually to do it high. It just hasn't worked out for them that way with where they've been drafting and who's been available. So to get someone like Cameron Williams where they did and have a chance to be a contributor in the future, even if he's the swing tackle for you where they drafted him, great, in the 6th round there. But obviously I think they're shooting for much higher than that.
Yeah, I mean, 2 6th-round draft pick tackles, Miles Hinton, 6'7", 323, Cameron Williams, 6'6", 323, or I did weights switch, but still, like you said, year 3, if he's your top swing tackle backup, Fred Johnson just got a contract,
right?
Like these pieces are very valuable. So yeah, and you know what? If he doesn't even make the team out of training camp, it happens all the time with 6th-round draft picks. Who the hell cares? We'll never remember him anyway.
Well, especially a tackle. Like you said, they added Hinton as well. Then they signed that guy from Rutgers, Holland Pierce, who's like massive. He's increased like 6'8" something. He's just a little shorter than me. And like 3 something as well. Well, it's just funny because it's always like, oh, these guys are so big. I'm like, I'm taller than them. They certainly weigh a lot more than me. They're stronger than I am, but I'm a little bit taller than them.
Now, could you play tackle in the NFL, Brandon Lee Gowton?
Not at my weight. I mean, I had to, add some weight on there. But I mean, I definitely, and maybe I'm a little too tall, honestly. You know what I mean? Right. Because when you don't want to be like too tall to the point where the leverage, that guy's the natural leverage getting under me. But yeah.
Good stuff as always, man. Good talking to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Johnny Marks.
There he is, Brandon Lee Gowton. He is 6'9". If you didn't know that, he is 6'9". It is. It's humbling standing next to him whenever I see him out at Phillies games or something. So I'm up to his waist, but a lot of people are as well. All right, we're going to come back. The BetParx Parlay of the day is still ahead. We'll wrap up some draft stuff and some Phillies as well. Don't go anywhere. Philly with Jihaad Marks. We're back toe-to-toe. Are you kidding me? Don't go anywhere. All right, listen. Let's talk about Ashley for a second. Oh man, if you're in the market to upgrade your furniture, maybe you're moving into a new spot, whatever it is, the low prices are blooming at Ashley. Spring into savings and save up to 50% off living rooms, bedrooms, and dining rooms, and you have it all delivered for free. That's right. Long-term, no-interest financing also available, and you're saving on top brand mattresses, getting free delivery setup and removal. But don't wait. Spring into savings now at Ashley, South Jersey, and Philadelphia. Financings with approved credit, minimum purchase required. Some exclusions may apply. For complete details, hurry to Ashley. Go to ashleyfurniture.com for more information. And PHLY is partnering with Ashley to host the Ashley Fan Cave Sweepstakes. One lucky participant has a chance to win a brand new Mod Max modular sectional to watch the next big game, plus an additional $1,000 Visa gift card to bring your dream fan cave to life. Ashley.com or ashleyfurniture.com for more information. Hoo-ah! All right, Empire Today has flooring experts, dedicated flooring professionals who are focused on flooring every single day. They're not the big box store that they have flooring, and they may have some people that know about flooring, but they may also have people that don't know anything about flooring that just started. Or you've been to the big box store. Those people are very busy. It's not an easy job. So you're getting Lou from plumbing that comes over because there's nobody that's in flooring. And Lou's like, yeah, what's your question? All right. You're not getting that at Empire Today. They live and breathe flooring, and they're with you every step of the way. It's a whole different ball game. So they bring the showroom right to your home. All right. They come to your home. You pick the right flooring and the right color for your space. You see how it looks with your furniture. This is important because the showroom's one thing, but having the floor or the carpet or whatever you're getting in your home, you put it right down next to your furniture. You know what it's going to look like in your space. They take precise measurements, and you have all your questions answered, so there's no surprises, and you're getting clear upfront and all-inclusive pricing. Plus, you can schedule installation as soon as the next day. So schedule that free in-home estimate because some things are just better at home. And PHLY listeners receive a $350 discount. Just use the promo code PHLY. You heard right. $350 discount. Restrictions apply. Visit empiretoday.com/PHLY for full details. empiretoday.com/PHLY. Hooah! We're back. All right, Tyler, we're going to get to the BetParx parlay of the day coming up here in a second. I feel like it's not fair what happened on Friday with our BetParx parlay of the day, because you would have won this bet, but the starting pitcher that you had for over on strikeouts leaves after 2 innings because of an injury. How snake bitten are we?
Not only leaves after 2 innings because of an injury, but then immediately the Mariners go, we're shutting this guy down for 2 weeks. And John, like, let's be honest. When somebody says we're shutting you down for 2 weeks with an elbow problem, is it really 2 weeks?
It's never 2 weeks with an
That's going to end up getting Tommy John surgery.
Yep, and it's because of you.
Yeah, it might be well, I also picked him to win the Cy Young this year. So that would just be my luck.
All right, so we lost, but you know what? Right now we're still plus 123. All right, so we're still on the plus side. You're gonna give me what you have for today, and then I'm gonna give you my pick. So what do you have for today?
Yeah, let's go to the Orioles and Yankees game today. Not a lot of games today, a handful of games, but I am gonna take the yes run first inning in the Yankees and Orioles game, or in other words, the over half a run in that game in the first inning. I believe it's at -104. The Yankees are actually first this year in percentages of innings in which they've scored in the first innings in which they've scored in a game. They've scored in 46% of their games in the first inning. Baltimore's not too far behind. They're fifth, 37%. And the guy that I think is going to kind of hinge on is Will Warren, the starter for the Yankees. He's actually really good in the first inning. He's really bad in the second inning. So I'm just going to hope that pushes up just a little bit. And that I think one of these two teams are going to score, because Tomoyuki Sugano, who is the starter for the Baltimore Orioles, is terrible in the first inning of his starts this year so far. I think that this is the closest you're going to get to even money on a yes or no first inning line that I've ever seen at -104. I am going to take yes, because I think Vegas believes it's going to happen as well.
You should win the bet just on pronouncing the starting pitcher's name correctly. Nice job. Very impressed. Say it again.
Tomoyuki Sugano.
Good job.
Baseball Reference is a big help.
I read everything out phonetically. You're right. On Baseball Reference, they write it out phonetically, so you can just say it. But even then, I still screw up, and I have to go to YouTube, and I have to be like, all right, let me actually hear it.
Understood.
So I can write it phonetically.
Well, and then sometimes you end up with Baseball Reference where they tell you that it's Romano, and then Rob Thompson has to 12 times tell you that no, it's Romano.
It's Romano. Yep, you're right, and that's why you need to cross reference it, because sometimes it's not always correct. All right, so I'm gonna go to the hardwood, as they like to say in the business. Some good games in the playoffs, some good series in the NBA playoffs. I've actually been enjoying it, but Miami is at home. And they could get swept. They're down 3-0. You would think that, all right, well, this is the game that they win. But the Cavs are favored by 8.5 points. That's a huge Cleveland line. I'm going to take the Cavs for the sweep, -8.5 tonight over the Heat. So actually, you know what? Let's scratch that. I'm going to take them on the money line, just to make sure, because I do believe they're going to sweep. 8.5's a lot of points, and they're very popular in the money line, so it's going to screw us. So, but it's +144 for our parlay. So let me do the math there. That's 72. So $50 bet's going to win a 72, Tyler Zuli.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, small payout, but we got to get back on the winning track. So
we do. All right, 50.
I wonder what the payout would have been pre-series if you would have bet, because you can. One of the things that I love is you can bet like exact series, and they're pretty good payouts because you got to be perfect.
They are.
I wonder what the payout would have been for a sweep for Cleveland.
Big.
I know it's probably likely that Cleveland was going to win the series, but to go exacta is more difficult.
How about 4-1 for Minnesota? They're up 3-1.
Yeah,
freaking JJ Redick played his starters the entire second half last night.
Yeah, the Lakers were a trendy pick to win this series and be a title contender, and they're knocking on the doorstep of getting eliminated in the first round.
Yeah, they're in trouble. They really are. JJ Redick, I forget that it hadn't been done in forever. They played their entire starters. By the way, LeBron James is 40 years old too. Mm-hmm. But yeah, and they look gassed. They had a lead deep into the fourth quarter, and they totally blew it. Minnesota wins last night. So, all right, that's our BetParx parlay of the day. Tyler, I know you have a PHLY Phillies show coming up today.
Yep.
The Phillies do not play today, so tomorrow is going to be a good day to talk a little Phillies or talk a little bit more Phillies. But just to wrap up the series in Chicago, they win 2 of 3. I'm very grateful for that. They lost the first game of the series. They won the next 2. Bryce Harper, it doesn't feel like he's had a hit in a couple of weeks. Aaron Nola, excellent last night. Last night. Really, really good.
By far his best start. Command was there. I thought the knuckle curve was moving better than it has. And the one thing that really jumped out to me was you and I have talked a lot about how he has struggled with first pitch strikes this year. His percentage of first pitch strike is way down throughout his career. It's below league average. He got ahead in 14 at-bats last night. And that doesn't include the at-bats where a player made contact on the first pitch. So it was 14 at-bats where he was ahead 0-1 after the first pitch. And I think needed that big time because it helped keep his pitch count down. It helped get him in a little bit of a rhythm. There was a point midway through the 5th and 6th innings where he had retired 10 out of 11, I think. And I just thought he felt like he was more in control last night than he has been at any point this year.
Yep. They got that. It was an extra inning game last night. They got the second insurance run, which was so big. So now they're up 3-1. And Romano, despite the start where he lost in extra innings, where I don't think he pitched poorly. I mean, really, it was the game-winning hit was kind of an broken bat that just made it over the infield. And then Pete Alonso made a really nice swing on a ball that was out of the strike zone. So Romano still has looked good, but he gave you a stress-free inning last night.
Yeah, and made a nice play now. And made a nice play with that third out.
Yep.
Listen, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I'm like, I'm over everything that happened in the first couple of weeks, but it is nice to see the velocity back up a little bit. He's throwing 97 pretty consistently now, which he wasn't doing early in the season. And I thought last night, maybe in a 1-game sample size, but I thought the slider turned over more than it had in the past. He wasn't throwing it as that little like humpback get me over slider. It was a slider with a purpose last night. So at least for one night, I thought he pitched really well.
Yeah, Kerkering had a good 8th inning. Alvarado, man, he was great again last night. He was cooking last night. When
he's on, he is one of probably the 5 or 6 most unhittable pitchers in baseball. You know, you think about guys like Duran, Yohan Duran from the Twins and Mason Miller from the A's. And like when these guys are on, these closers are on, they're unhittable. And I think Alvarado is part of that. And, obviously he has command issues from time to time, but like when he's throwing strike one, those at-bats are over more times than not.
Yep, and he was last night because then you bring in a cutter that's 92 or 93 that's just diving out of the strike zone. But yeah, no, you're right. I mean, sometimes being effectively wild, you know what I mean? Like wild in the strike zone isn't a bad thing. You can't live and die with that. And his command has been very good his last couple outings. So that's a good Cubs team on the road, got swept by the Mets, lost the first 2 games in the series. You know me. I'm negative on Nola. People accuse me of being an Aaron Nola hater. He was excellent last night, and they really needed that start, and he was very, very good.
And by the way, this was a Cubs team this year so far, John, that is averaging almost 7 runs per game. They were at like 6.8 coming into the series. They scored 9 runs in 3 games.
Yep.
They scored 9 runs in 3 games, and they weren't competitive in game 2 because the Phillies jumped all over them. They win game 1 because the Phillies offense was dreadful. And they got to Taijuan Walker a little bit in the early portions of the game, but they scored 1 run last night. I mean, they averaged 3 runs per game in a 3-game series where they're an offense that's scoring almost 7 per night. And I think it was an excellent job by the Phillies pitching staff for the most part of calming this offense because they're getting productivity up and down the lineup. Like Pete Crow, I can't say enough good things about how Pete Crow Armstrong's played so far this season. I mean, talk about a turnaround. The guy couldn't hit a beach ball to start last season. And this year, he's so locked in.
Yeah. All right. Shout out to everybody watching on TV. Slide on over to allphly.com. Time for overtime. Here because I got to run. But shout out to everybody. We'll see you back tomorrow. We'll do some more draft stuff tomorrow, but then kind of focus more on the Phillies as day off today at Washington. And the Nats have been playing some feisty baseball as well. So, you just can't go to Washington and be like, oh, well, that's an easy series win. Got to get this offense going. Bryce Harper and Schwarber have been ice cold. Harper 0 for 5 last night. So we'll definitely dig into the Phillies. Black Gritty's going to be on the show tomorrow. So we'll be live in studio tomorrow. Everybody, appreciate you tuning in. And switch on over to Ant. He is live. The Anthony Gargano Show is live right now on PHLY. We appreciate you, and we'll talk to you tomorrow. See you.
We all silly like the mayor.